Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the T.H.O. Movie Reviews podcast, the show where we bring you passionate, honest, and insightful film criticism. I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, and this is part 2 in our series about the best films, aka our favorite films of 2017. And to help me get through it all, I'm joined by several of my wonderful colleagues, starring Maxwell Meyers. Max, did I hear you correctly? Did you just say Steven Spielberg directed Maximum Overdrive on cocaine?
No, somebody thought Spielberg did it, and someone corrected her, sarcastically saying, yeah, at the height of his career, he got hopped up on coke and made Maximum Overdrive.
Because I think maybe this would make a good alternate reality.
No,
I want to see that.
Well, speaking of alternate reality, Mo and I have decided that we're going to write the Harriet Tubman movie that Hollywood has never been able to get off the ground.
I thought we were going to write the making of
the making of the Harriet Tubman movie that's impossible to make. Yes.
This isn't going to be like that Tristram Shandy thing with Steve Coogan, right?
Maybe.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, I remember that thing. No, it won't be that.
I feel like this will be more like The Disaster Artist.
Yes.
But we never get to production.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, moving on. Also here we have, he's the man with President Snakes on his shirt. It's Mo Shaunette. Mo, how you doing?
I'm doing good. If you want to vote for freedom, vote for President Snakes. There are 5 snakes in one pantsuit. They are running for presidents.
Still better than Trump.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't want to get too political. That would be way better than what we have to deal with now.
I'll do it. We're 6 days in, and it's already a shit show. So.
How many snakes are in that pantsuit? Because
5.
Because I was going to say 5 heads are better than 1.
Yeah, 2 heads are better than 1, and they got way more than 2 so she can get the job done. 4 of them are working when 1 takes a break. Vote for 5 snakes in one pantsuit. Vote for President Snakes.
I'm sold. There's nothing more to say. And also here we have Hanna McGrath. Hanna, how are you doing besides hating The Shape of Water?
Oh, snap.
Well,
The
I'm
gauntlet
doing
has been
well.
thrown.
I saw it last night.
Did you say you hated it? I didn't actually hear you say it. We were talking about it. You just said you didn't care for it.
That's true. I was the one who dropped the
enjoyed
intro.
Did Ben throw you under the bus?
I don't think that's throwing under the bus.
Well,
She clearly was keeping it a secret.
I rushed to it last night thinking it might make my top 5, but I needn't to worry because it did not. But yep.
I've got your back.
Thank you.
And I've got everybody else's back when they say things like that Valerian is better than Dunkirk, but that's another story. Well, not your back, and that I agree with you guys, but I defend your right to say it.
Thank you.
And that's what America's about.
That is what America's about, and I actually do like Valerian for that matter. But I'm getting off track. So as I said, we're going to be talking about our favorite films of 2017. I already did my top 5 with Jim Newman and Patrick Bellman on a couple days before. So I'm doing my bottom 5, which is not, in fact, my least favorite films of the year.
6
but
to 10.
My 6 to 10 on my top 10 list. So, and as it happens, I think this was a really excellent year. And so I do feel quite passionately about the movies that are down there. So, Max, let's kick it off with you. What is your favorite, 5th favorite film of 2017?
The worst of my favorite films?
The worst of your favorite. Which of your favorite films do you hate the most?
Out of my 5 favorite films, the one I hated the most, or liked the least, would be The Big Sick.
What's wrong with it? Why isn't it number 1?
Why isn't it number 1?
No, I'm just kidding. Just sell us on The Big Sick.
Why? I shouldn't have to sell you on The Big Sick. It's a great movie. It's a true story, and unlike other true stories, it's actually a true story, and it's really unbelievable. The base story, we wouldn't believe it could be true, and I think that's part of why it speaks to me. I've been a pretty hopeless romantic most of my life, and so, I don't know, there's something about it. I really like Ray Romano's performance. Him and Holly Hunter made me laugh and cry. Sometimes in the same scene, the way Kumail Nanjiani just takes control. They did a great script, and who's the girl? I always forget her name.
Zoe Kazan.
Zoe Kazan. Yeah. I even liked her, and the cast was great. The movie was wonderful. I saw it with Mo. We went on a man date. And we saw this romantic movie together. Not intentionally, but I mean intentionally. We went to go see it, but anyways.
I feel like a whole other podcast is opening up right here.
Mo is a gentleman. That's all. Okay.
I don't kiss on the first date.
I don't kiss and tell.
Well, you are a gentleman too, Max, and you have great taste in movies because, in my opinion, because I also adore this movie. I think, we talked about, we did a podcast about it. We talked about how it's a romantic comedy, but riff on that genre, but it's also a buddy movie, isn't it? Because it's really, the relationship between Camille and Johnny and the parents is just so beautiful and hilarious, and that's really most of the movie.
Yeah, and it also, of course, we have the Pakistani family that, it's just nice to see that kind of flair on the screen, or not a bunch of white people in a love story. It's a nice little added
and
flavor to it.
It was about being like the son of immigrants and being... I've said this, I've talked about this movie before. I also love it. If we were going to do a top 10, this would probably be in there. But it is a movie that does feel like it's where cultural background informs the character but doesn't dictate it, and that is my favorite thing. But it's a lot of Kumail Nanjiani, the character, not the actor or the co-writer, because he's playing himself. A lot of his arc is learning how to relate to his own culture, and it's not about like seeing it as this monolith that he has to live in the shadow of, that he has to obey, but it's about what does it mean to him and his life, and that's interesting to me, and it results in a lot of the funniest jokes in the movie. For my money, I really liked it. It's a great feature.
I think this falls into another line of trends that I'm seeing with movies lately, is that it's not just one thing. I think we talked about it earlier this year, that you can't just go, oh, let's do the Mummy movie, and we'll put Tom Cruise in it, and that's what will make it work, and as opposed to something like this where it's a love story, and it's based on a true story, but it's also from a person with this background. Yes, it's a little bit different.
It's also about this clash of cultures. Between the parents, between Holly Hunter and Ray Romano, as them coming from different backgrounds.
And also I think it's great to see Kumail struggle with his own personal issues amongst the love. It's not just like, oh, I met this person and now I'm going to be better, and oh no, I'm not better, but now I want to be better and now I'm better. Like, that seems to be like the real path most of these movies take, and it really didn't do that. It did a lot of other things, and I think that's what's important. You can't just go out and do a romantic comedy. Do something else, say something else, and that's what makes it a whole nother level of movie, and I think they nailed it.
I think too it's worth mentioning that this was kind of a movie that came out of nowhere, a small movie picked up to be released by Amazon, and yet this is not like some, hoity-toity art house movie, although God knows I love those. This is a really, really accessible, funny movie, and it was a big hit, and I think Kumail Nanjiani and people like him were thinking outside the box, working outside the main studio system. I think they may be the future, because this is entertainment.
Think outside
and I can
the
see everyone looking at the dog barking, but
I don't think it's in here.
We're
filming this in a coffee shop, by the way.
we're going to roll with it. It won't take us down.
And I guess stray from the formula is really maybe the new message of Hollywood.
Yes.
And that's why I picked my number 5.
Mo, what's your... Oh, sorry, Hannah, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say it would definitely be in my top 10 also. I loved that movie. And bonus, go on Twitter, and a lot of the people involved in the movie posted old pictures of, her during her goth stage, or him, totally worth a look. So go on Twitter and check that out.
I definitely am going to check that out now.
Yeah.
Mo, what's your fifth favorite film of the year?
Much like last year, up until today, actually, what my number 5 is going to be kind of changed around. There were a lot of good candidates this year. There was Coco might have been there. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri might have been there. A lot of different good stuff because it was a strong year for movies, not just the Oscar bait, but in the blockbusters. But I think for me, just because of where I am right now, and this could change, I'll be honest, this could change in the next week or so, but where I am right now, my 5th favorite movie of the year was Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
What?
It's I love how different it is. Like, it's not a conventional Star Wars movie. It kind of turns things on its head, but it does this in a really interesting and engaging way. And I think that more than anything else, it's what Star Wars needed. Like, I know that there's a lot of fanboys who are upset with the changes on it, and yeah, I can see that. But at the same time, we need something different from these movies. They need to be able to take more risks and be more adventurous. And it's not perfect, I'll be the first to admit that, but it's a hell of a ride, and I love it for that. So yeah, that's my favorite. You really have something to say.
No,
I was saying that, like, after our last Jedi podcast, Max is so happy to have somebody in this room that is on his side. His face was like vindicated.
It was. Last time.
You should have been here last time because Patrick, as our listeners will know by now, picked The Last Jedi as his favorite film.
His number one.
His number
That's
one.
so
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
It didn't make my top 5, but that's because I'll be the first one. I'm not like a huge Star Wars fan, but I love all the risks they took.
Yeah.
And
And I just love like going on film Twitter and finding people who are writing these long threads of just like, okay, here's why this actually does work really well. Here's why they can explain how the Casino Planet subplots works really well. Here's how Luke being a weirdo on the Irish island planet, how that is actually really consistent with his character. Like, I'm into it, man. I love it.
And I think I forgot to mention, I don't know if I mentioned this to you last time, I think we got into a debate about the Porgs and their existence. I actually found out between then and now, the Porgs were actually puffins.
I know.
Yeah.
On the island. They said
Yeah.
that, I guess, during production at a certain point, the puffins stopped being scared of humans, and they couldn't get rid of them, and they didn't know how to, they're like, well, what do we do, keep puffins in a Star Wars movie? They're like, we'll just edit over it with another creature. And that's how Porgs
Really?
were born.
That's
That's the reason they're there,
the
so...
only
That
Well,
is lovely.
that actually makes me feel better, because then I'm like, okay, so Disney wasn't like, throw in an animal for us to sell. It was just more like, we gotta do something about these puffins.
Well, who
Life
knows
gives you
what was really
lemons.
going on behind
Well, when
the
life
scenes,
gives you
I mean.
puffins, turn it into money.
I will say one thing about this. You know, as you all know, I am not a Last Jedi acolyte, and I am a huge Star Wars fanboy. But my problems with it are less like tweaking of the mythology, and then what I see is serious problems with the writing, with the structure of the story, with the kind of the tone and some of the humor, but. I'll say what I said after I ranted about Spider-Man: Homecoming, a couple months ago. It is a big damn galaxy, and this movie, wasn't my cup of tea, but I do love Star Wars, and I'm glad that it's struck a chord for people and moved them, because it's clear it had an effect on people. So
that's my number 5 is Star Wars Episode 8.
Hannah, what's your number 5 pick?
So, like Max and Mo, my number 5, I kind of have been struggling with, and I've decided, I was looking at The Big Sick, I was looking at Loving Vincent, I was actually looking at a film called Mr. Roosevelt as well, but I settled on 3 Billboards. Woo! Yes, I settled on. I didn't settle. You don't settle for Frances McDormand.
I mean, that was the worst of your best movies. Sounds like you settled.
No, she was fabulous, and her performance in that movie, and how kind of her strength and also the fragility of those around her was very interesting, as well as I loved her, gosh, I don't even know I don't even know. She was so brilliant in every way, and it showed a lot of strength. It showed a lot of, what is right and wrong. It didn't try to give you this answer of like, this is what a good person looks like, or this is what a bad person, but it did, admonish the bad. But it was an incredibly interesting film, and it wasn't what I expected going into it. And I was very struck not only by the various performances and the various kind of conflicts and changes and like questions of like what is right or wrong, what is the right. I mean, at the end, she and Sam Rockwell. Have you seen it?
No, not yet.
Oh, don't say
Oh
that.
gosh.
Her and Sam Rockwell do something at the end.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I mean, plug your ears. Just they're driving away at the end, about to do something, and even in those moments, you're questioning,
Whether you want them to.
Yeah, and I left the film not only feeling satisfied, but also I still had questions about. Even, that last moment, I was just hanging there,
No, they do raise these questions in it of when something's not right, but when nothing is right, is it really wrong? Mm-hmm. And also, I think she really raises up, like, what is the right option when you feel like you have no options at all?
Well, let me ask you, like, you said it wasn't what you expected going in. What did you expect going in, and like, what did it turn out to be that was different from that?
Well, I did expect it to be funnier than it was. It had funny aspects, but the trailer made it seem like very funny and almost like Coen Brothers level humor, and it's not like that at all. There's a whole storyline that I ended up seeing this movie by myself. My husband had a man cold and was like asleep by like.
What is a man cold?
I've never heard of it, but I like it. Find out what a man cold is.
No, that's like.
It's
a minor cold, but he acts like it's Ebola.
It's when a man gets a cold just as bad as a woman, but they tend to be like, I'm dying. I've done it too. I'll admit to it. I just kind of curl up like a dead animal. Like, I don't want to be touched, but then after 3 days, I just want all the love.
Well, he was curled up like a dead animal asleep.
Oh, he's in the first stage.
And I was really bored, so I went to the Fox and saw 3 Billboards by myself at like a 9:50 showing. The whole theater was empty, and there's this one storyline where I'm just sobbing. And one of the ushers, which I'm like, why at this point are you still ushering? I'm the only person here.
Because that's what we're supposed to do.
He walks in with his light, sees that I'm like weeping in the front row in front of the bars where like my feet are up. I'm just like, oh my God. Looks at me and just like on his heels spins around and like marches.
Okay, which parts were you crying at?
The story. Whose storyline?
Cancer.
Don't worry, I already know about that part.
Good. I was completely taken aback, and I was really how that was built up was just
where that went.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. But yeah, so not only just the feeling did I not expect, but I often am used to going in and just seeing either this woman that's like, whether it's she's Kill Bill-esque or kind of just unapologetically like badass, or I see this woman that's just like the hero. And with Frances McDormand, you were still questioning things throughout, and I loved that she was, not 100% good and made some questionable choices that affected people for the rest of their lives. And then I was taken aback by, I didn't expect to have a character that was so complex that really made me question so much, like, what is right, what is wrong, what she should do, what I would do, what anyone would do, and how easy it was for a small town to just be like, dead girl, move on. Like, that whole culture was fascinating as well.
It goes back to like what you said a while ago about, movies now that even if they have a female lead, they put her up on a pedestal and don't allow her to go dark. It sounds like this is, the opposite, or the bound to that kind of thing.
Exactly, and it's exactly what I want. I want to see female characters. I love my Wonder Woman heroes, I love my Rays, but I want ones that aren't fucked up. I want ones that make...
A little broken.
Yeah, a little broken, because that's reality, and we allow kind of male characters to be broken but still hot, sexy or heroes or whatever all the time.
Well, and also I think it's important because otherwise a female that is like Wonder Woman, who is untouchable and isn't affected by certain things or never breaks down, just becomes like a Superman type figure. Then it's like it loses her believability. Just the same as a man. It's the same thing can be said about, James Bond for a while. It was just like, oh, I'm James Bond. I'll never die and I can't be touched. It's like, oh, well, that's unbelievable at a certain point. And so, yeah, it's good that it's not just creating strong women that are strong, but also that can have human emotions and break.
Be flawed and unlikable.
Yeah, fragile a little bit.
Yeah.
But not like in the way that Republicans describe women as fragile.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll say, Jim talked about this movie on Friday, and I'll say what I said to him. I'm sold. I'm gonna see it that much sooner because it sounds pretty damn good from everything everyone's saying.
It is. I was really happily surprised by this film.
Even though you were stopping.
Oh yeah.
That's a good sign. A lot of the times, who doesn't love a good cinema cry?
I'm always down for an ugly Kim K cry. I'm just like.
I like the Chrissy Teigen cry. Kind of smile.
Just while we're all here, real quick, even though I don't know if this is on anyone's top five list, who here cried during Coco?
I knew it was coming, and I knew I was gonna cry.
My husband didn't cry at our wedding, which I'm fine with. We walked out of the movie, and he has tears in his eyes.
The man I was with, just was like, I was like, man, he is not doing anything. And then he started doing that thing where he started convulsing because he was trying not to make any sound while he cried. And I was like, oh, buddy, are you okay?
Okay, good. So sorry about going off topic there.
No, that's actually a great transition because my 10th favorite film of the year, it's a tie between the two Pixar films of the year, Cars 3 and Coco. Yes, I actually do like Cars 3 that much.
It's the best of the Cars movie.
It's fun. It's fun.
Clear, but it's there.
I grew up with
came out this year.
I grew up with Thomas the Tank Engine. I love anthropomorphized machines. What can I say?
I liked Cars 1. Did not like Cars 2. Thought Cars 3 was unnecessary after Cars 2.
Well, as a lot of our listeners will know, I've been reviewing movies for Willamette Week for a while now, and that has meant that I have seen more children's animated films than I ever cared to. And I'm not just talking about, having to go see The Boss Baby, which I'm happy to do because who doesn't love a baby with Alec Baldwin's voice? I'm talking about Smurfs, The Lost Village, The Nut Job 2, Nutty by Nature, and it's not just the visual ugliness about these movies that I hate.
The Emoji Movie.
No, thank God I was spared. But what I hate is the moralizing and how these films always tack on some kind of message that they don't even believe in, but it's clearly there to convince the parents, see, the movie's good for your kids, and to which I would say, no, these movies are not good for your kids. They're pandering to their intelligence. I mean, they're insulting to newborns, in my opinion. But Pixar does what they've always done with Cars 3 and Coco. Certainly they have messages, but they're actually messages they believe in. They're words of wisdom and emotions that they feel strongly about and put across with conviction. Cars 3 at its core, it's about cars, but it's also about a superstar, a celebrity, realizing, hey, it's time to pass the torch. It's time to become a teacher instead of a student and, guide someone else. And so it's really, at its core, a movie about the joys of teaching.
Skywalker.
Yes, like Luke Skywalker. Yes, yeah. The last car, the last Lightning McQueen. Coco is an incredibly funny satire that creates a land of the dead that's equal parts hallucinogenic, bureaucratic, divided even into classes to a certain degree, and it's about a young boy dealing with how to honor his family and how to pursue his own dreams at the same time. It's a beautiful story. I did cry in it, as I've already said. But my choice of these two films comes with a big, fat, damn asterisk next to both of them. As you all probably know, and as probably all our listeners know, right before Coco came out, John Lasseter, who until recently ran Pixar, stepped aside because of quote-unquote missteps, which we now know. Yeah, which we now know it was sexual harassment that had been going on for a while, and they've got this kind of the specifics of this almost entirely under lock and key because Disney has a lot invested in rehabilitating his image because they need him. He makes a lot of money for him. But here's the thing.
He also turned Walt Disney around when they couldn't.
Yes, yeah. But here's the thing. I mean, the thought that Pixar, a company who promotes all these virtues, honorability, honesty, family, and a company that parents trust their kids with, the idea that all in a way is kind of invalidated by the fact that they don't really practice what they preach, because I have to imagine that the behavior of a lot of the directors and the core people there enabled this kind of thing, because they're all tight with Lasseter, that's a really disturbing thing. And as much as I admire what Pixar does artistically, I have to say, if they can't practice what they preach, if they can't actually live by the values that they put across in their movies, they should fucking go away. I mean, that's end of story. It's really depressing.
But if it's let's just say, if it's just John Lasseter, is that worth dissolving an entire company?
Absolutely, because you have to believe that, again, the people around him enabled him. I love Andrew Stanton did Wall-E and Finding Nemo, but I cannot believe that Andrew Stanton knew nothing about this. I mean, we know Lasseter was doing this in full view of people, even like at events where he'd be sitting in the audience and fondling a woman next to him. I mean, this is bigger. This is bigger than one guy. And, I take your point. I mean, I don't know all the specifics of this. No one does. So maybe it's more of an isolated incident than I know. But I just have a nagging feeling that it's not. And that there's...
I think I read today someone said they actually have a defensive move called the Lasseter, which does
I
not
heard that as
bode
well. Yeah, that's true. That
when you have a name to defend yourself from, or for people to defend themselves from you, you're in trouble.
So my only issue with specifically, I guess my only concern, I agree. So I agree that most likely a lot of more people at Pixar and in Disney knew what was happening. I do agree that he needs to leave and no longer be involved at all. I don't know. I don't really care about Pixar as a corporation in that sense necessarily. But my question is this. If this is the first movie to not only star, cast, be written by, and I think directed by...
Co-directed.
Yeah.
For Coco? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was Lee Unkrich was one of the directors. I forget who the other one is.
Lee Unkrich was the lead.
Yeah, but he is he was a writer for it. He is
was it Adrian Molina?
Adrian Molina.
Yes.
Those two.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just... It's the first movie ever to center around a protagonist that is Hispanic.
Yes.
And that not only is needed, necessary, important, long overdue, but oftentimes people of color and women or people in the LGBT community have been surrounded by predators and had to find their own way to triumph. So we have to question kind of what the culture was. This is a very well-known white man who is one of the most famous in animation, film, whatsoever. What, is he doing Weinstein level, tactics of intimidation? Is he going after people? Is he like, so I guess I would say with Coco, I'm not ready to just asterisk it away in a sense, just because we don't know what that culture is yet. Are these people being intimidated? Are they being quieted? Or are they a part of it? And in that case, I would agree with you. But my concern is this is so needed. We need kids to be able to see themselves in movies. And so are we going to let a white man
Ruin that?
Just like would I allow Cameron's comments on Wonder Woman and his attacking of Wonder Woman to like be, the reason I, cross it out in a way.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I think there is a level. It's not just. This isn't as simple as owners of a local bakery denying a couple of cake, where you can just go, oh, these people are the company, dismantled. They disobeyed the law.
It was more than that.
Well,
no.
no.
It was like leaking their public information so that people can send them death threats.
No, trust me. I know there's way more to it than that. But I mean, ultimately, that whole situation was two people. Like, so you can go, yeah, those two people are the business. Take it apart. This is a whole conglomerate, and as Hannah said, Pixar has done I feel done more good than bad for the world. And really, John Lasseter at this point is mostly executive producing. I think he did Cars 3. I don't know what, but I mean, he's not really directing anymore. He's more in charge of saying, that's a good idea, go work on that.
Well, I mean, a couple. Oh, sorry.
That they're not just. They need to just.
No,
kick him out.
And I'm not saying
but that's what I'm agreeing with is that maybe he is very removed. Maybe he barely touched Coco. Maybe they did know. I don't know, but. The problem is Disney and Pixar are not admonishing and going down on him like they did Weinstein. They're not really kicking him out. They're like putting him on leave.
He's on a leave of absence. He says he's coming back this year.
See, we're past that. And in that case, like, I would question, giving more money to Pixar. I don't know if he's still working there, if I ever would pay to see another.
I think all these businesses where these things are coming up, if you can be fired for it at McDonald's, you should be fired for it at Pixar.
Exactly.
Like, I don't think that's really that hard to understand, and you should not have a job.
He shouldn't.
And so, if he messed up, regardless of who was involved or what good he did, he should be removed from the thing. And that's what I'm saying is maybe just remove the pieces that don't work, put people in you think will do a good job, and see where it goes. I don't think an entire industry is worth dismantling. I mean, it's not like Hustler, okay? We're talking about Pixar.
Well, I mean, I want to speak to all of what you two are saying, and I mean, I do think Lasseter is involved pretty intensely with each of these films. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, Hannah, you raise an absolutely spot on point. I mean, this does matter. That. They made a movie with a young Latino protagonist, and incidentally, the main character in Cars 3, aside from Owen Wilson, was a Latino car named Cruz Ramirez, or Latina. It was Cristela Alonso was the voice of the character.
Which brings up the question of race in Cars. Like at one point, like they're talking about cars who weren't allowed to race for one reason or another, and one of them it's like because he was black, and one because she was a woman, and they're like voiced by Isaiah Whitlock, was it?
I don't remember.
It's one of the guys from The Wire and esteemed character actress Margot Martindale.
I love Margot Martindale.
So that just brings up a whole can of worms. It's like So was there car segregation?
The Cars films will make you question your faith in reality, basically.
You're looking way too close.
But here's the thing. I mean,
yes.
I mean, like you're right, Hannah, and I think like what you said is an argument for something which I believe in is like, let's at least give them a chance to prove they can do better, and if they can't, we can try to make them go away. Then how, I don't know, but
not give them your money.
I guess so. But I mean, if they can, then of course they should stick around, because you're right. They what they do matters.
All right.
Shall we move on?
Wow,
That
that number 10 really took a left turn. One that I thought was going to take a few weeks later.
Max, what's your fourth favorite film of the year?
I forgot. I was gonna mention my favorite part in The Big Sick was the smooth move he uses when he gets his future wife back to his apartment. They turn on Night of the Living Dead, and she goes, "Oh, I've never seen this," and it had already started. He goes, "Well, to quickly catch you up, so the dead have come back to life," and then he just starts making out with her, and I was like, "Oh, that move is so good! It was so perfect." I was like, that was my favorite part of the entire, like the fact that he's gonna explain
Taking
Night of the
notes.
Living Dead, exactly. So, but my fourth favorite film of the year was 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
What a love for those billboards.
It was so good. I went to the Hollywood. I pulled a double feature with a friend. We went to see it. I was like, we showed up, and I was like, all right, I want to see Lady Bird, 3 Billboards, Shape of Water, whatever we can do in these next few hours. And he's like, well, I don't know what 3 Billboards about. We're gonna go see that then, because I like to ambush people apparently with movies. So he had no idea what he was walking into. I did. So I'm also a jerk. So I guess unlike Hannah, I think I went in kind of expecting the worst, and so I was actually caught by how funny it was.
Why did you expect the worst?
Because I knew what the movie was about, and I feel every time a movie's like, this is about rape and murder, but here's a trailer that's going to make you laugh, it makes people go, oh, we're going to be fine. And then they go, no, we're not fine. Halfway through, I'm crying. And so, which don't get me wrong, a lot of us were. But I felt like whenever maybe I've just seen enough trailers and enough movies to know, when they play up burn to death and comedy, I should probably just expect more focus on the burn to death part. Because generally the movies that get critical acclaim about burning to death in comedy isn't for the comedy.
I'm not a trailer person. I will usually only see one trailer for every movie and will not watch
same.
more.
Trust me, I watched 3 Billboards. I think I might have saw that one twice only because I was like, that was actually kind of funny. I'm going to watch it again. But I still
Did
knew
you
what
watch the Red Band trailer?
I did watch the Red
Because
Band.
it's so good.
That's the only one to watch. But yeah, I think just to kind of echo everything Hannah said, Frances McDormand gives a great performance. She makes you question a lot of things. What's right, what's wrong. But also Sam Rockwell giving just a dynamite performance. And Woody Harrelson making me cry. Oh God, just thinking back on it, I think it was just really, it was a movie I liked to see. It was this, I was telling Mo, what it felt like was a city full of weird people dealing with a very real problem and just letting that play out however that would. Like having, I always forget his name, Peter Dinklage, in love with Frances McDormand's character, and Frances McDormand's abusive husband dating a 19-year-old who just doesn't know anything. But what's so great about her, and this was my favorite part, she was actually one of my favorite parts of the entire movie, because you just think she's this dumb girl, but really she's kind of dumb. But she's also just fairly innocent too. Like she's
genuine.
She's genuine. That's like she doesn't like. I think my favorite part in the movie is Frances McDormand she's kind of like at her wit's end, and her husband is at this restaurant with this 19-year-old girlfriend, and he just came over and told her anger begets anger. And that's what his girlfriend told him, the 19-year-old, and she walks over with a bottle of wine in one hand, and you're just like, oh, she's going to smash it over his head. And she goes, hey, did you tell him anger begets anger? And she goes, yeah, well, it's not mine, I didn't make it up, but I read it somewhere on a bookmark in a book about polo. Is that the one with horses? I always forget. Polio. That's the one I was reading. And then she Frances, but like, I think she just kind of can read people. Like, and I think that was the point, is like she goes there and she's mad, but she just sees this person and she realizes she really means no harm. She's just trying to live her life too, and she just goes, you take care of her and you be nice to her, unlike you were to me. And she has this resolve, and you're right, a fragility. That part where she talks to the deer, and then she just starts breaking down. And I was like, although I will admit afterward, I was like, okay, so if Sally Hawkins wins the Academy Award, if you play a mute person, you get an Academy Award. But if Frances McDormand wins, every time you talk to a deer, you get an award. Because Helen Mirren also talked to a deer in The Queen, and she won the Academy Award. And I think I might have found the key talking to deers.
So, talking of awards, which, if any, awards that either the SAGs or the Oscars or even the Globes you think this one will take?
Well, first of all, I will say, I think it's a goddamn shame that The Big Sick got 0 awards.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that the Golden Globes has a comedy section and did not a single nod, not even in a writing category, is a crime. I think that alone would have been a good one. It was worthy of any of those categories, and the fact that Get Out is in the comedy
Wasn't Holly
section.
Hunter nominated for supporting actress?
Nope.
No?
No, they were completely shut out from the Globes, and so there's that. But I've been trying to talk about the Best Actress race. It's one of the hardest ones to gauge this year, which is amazing.
I got my predictions for it.
Well, I mean, I feel like I know who's going to be there, but who's going to take it?
But that's interesting. Like, when was the last time people were focused on the Best Actress category?
No, not a lot. Everyone always, I've read everywhere, they're always like, oh, the Best Actress category is always stacked. And I was like, it has not been stacked at least for the last 5 years. There's always been one person you know is going to take it.
But it's like interesting. Like,
it is interesting.
So many different characters,
roles.
roles.
And that was the thing is we ended up seeing 3 Billboards and then Shape of Water. And I was like, which was a better performance? And my friend goes, I couldn't even tell you. They were so different from one another. The challenges themselves they were two different performances entirely. It was really hard to gauge the two, even side by side. I really think it has some great shots at writing.
Yeah.
I think the writing in it's really good.
I'd give it, I'm guessing original screenplay.
Oh, yeah. A Best Original Screenplay. It might even take the Screenplay Award tonight. There's only one screenplay category at the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
So they could very well take it. And then I think Frances McDormand, but I think everywhere else it'll probably get shut out over something splashier like Dunkirk or Shape of Water.
I think Margot Robbie's going to take it.
Take the Best Actress? I don't think she will. I think she's too fresh.
I'm leaning towards Saoirse Ronan, personally.
I want her to win, but I think it will be Margot Robbie.
I think it's either Saoirse Ronan or Frances McDormand.
See, I think they might give it to Sally Hawkins. I really do.
No.
I think we're gonna really. You got to remember, for every good move that the Academy Awards does, where it's like a bold, fresh choice, they go with the safe choice next. And I think, although I love Sally Hawkins' performance, I really think they will give it to her because it's schmaltzy and romantic, and also good.
It's a spill.
Everybody pause while something's spilled.
There's a lot of activity happening here. But anyways, my number 4 does go to 3 Billboards because it's an interesting formula that I don't get to see very often. I think a lot of the times these movies are really pack a movie with like 1 or 2 kind of strange or curious characters, usually at the end at the butt of a joke, filled with a whole slew of normal characters around them. And this one actually felt like a weird cast of characters all around. They all had their own quirks, they all had their own lives, and they all commingled together to create a tapestry that was this movie. And I think that's interesting. I feel like a writer really took some time and thought about who these people were. Even Sam Rockwell's mom, who was played by, who was one of the moms from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which was really hard to separate.
I'm going to hold everything y'all just said about the awards season in mind when I bet heinous amounts of money on the whole thing in Vegas. So.
Yeah, you cannot, we all gave different answers.
Well, and they're not even all accurate. I mean, I guess, because I've been really mad at the Golden Globes, so I haven't been following it. But, I mean, Margot Robbie is nominated for musical or comedy.
I think
Yeah,
any movie that
'cause-
makes you laugh a little bit, it must be a comedy.
So
I mean, like,
I
Get
think
Out is
she'll win
nominated.
for that.
Is nominated as a comedy.
Don't
Yeah,
even, don't even get me
that's-
started.
That's
Yeah.
worthy of discussion.
The Martian was nominated as a comedy.
Yeah.
Mo, what's your fourth favorite film of the year?
So for me, for the past few years, Netflix has surprised me by putting out really interesting movies. 2015, one of my favorites there was Beasts of No Nation. 2016, my favorite film of the year was 13th. And this year, they put out Mudbound, and Mudbound is phenomenal. For those who haven't seen it, first off, do that. I'm really upset that Netflix is pushing Bright as hard as it is, but not Mudbound.
Yeah.
Because Bright, again, we're talking about the Weinstein effect. Max Landis, who, in addition to being just a turd muncher, is also a sexual predator. But Mudbound it's based on a book. It's set in Mississippi during World War II, where it's two families who work on a farm. One of them is white, one of them is black, and the first half is kind of just their lives. Like, these are the struggles of them living in this, trying to make this farmland work, which is extremely difficult to do, and a massive change for the wife of the white family is someone who's born and raised in the city and cannot adjust to the country well. And then the second half, they both have family members who are serving in World War II, and they come home, and their experiences are wildly different. The cast in this movie is incredible. Like, here's who we got. We got Jason Clarke, Michelle Williams, Jonathan Banks, Garrett Hedlund, Jason Mitchell, Rob Morgan, Mary J. Blige. That's phenomenal. That is insane. Like, the amount of talented people that are there. They give a great performance. It's just really, really good, and I really wish more people would watch it and would appreciate it, and I really hope Dee Reese directed it, and she did phenomenal, and I keep using that word, but it's true. She did a great job, and I really hope there's more in store from her, because she's
Someone to
amazing.
watch.
Yes. So, that's my number 4. I don't know, from the looks on y'all's faces, you haven't seen it.
You and I have both discussed. I see a trailer and I can at least get an idea of what I'm in and what I'm getting into. And
Yeah.
it's really hard for me sometimes to sit down and knowingly know that I'm going to be sad.
It's not exactly the happiest ending.
I mean, I already told you today I watched Three Amigos. And for the 5th time, I love that movie. So yeah, it's
Well, since I haven't seen it, I will ask you about something I know about it.
Go for it.
I believe the cinematographer was Rachel Morrison,
Okay.
who did Fruitvale Station, who did Black Panther, incidentally. Does the movie look as beautiful as I've heard?
That's tough to say because, the movie's called Mudbound. They're in most of the action takes place on a farm where nothing grows, so it's just huge fields of mud. But it's shot really well.
but it's pretty mud.
Yeah, it does look really good. Like, the most memorable sequence for me is their big Kuleshov effects moments where we see Jason Mitchell overseas. He's like a sergeant in a tank battalion going through Nazi-occupied Europe. And on the other side, back at home at the farm, we have Rob Morgan as his dad, tilling the fields. He falls off like a tractor or some kind of machine and breaks his leg. And they cut back and forth between those two, and they're both super intense. And we recognize why later, because we understand that for Jason Mitchell, because the guy next to him dies. But for Rob Morgan's character, they can't afford to go to a doctor, and they don't have the money for it. They don't have the time. And there's not a lot of doctors around that will treat a black family. So they're kind of screwed now. Just like this one incident has thrown their entire livelihood into jeopardy. But stuff like that's more of an editing thing than a cinematography thing. But it's really well put together. I know earlier we did a podcast on least favorite tropes, and one of mine was that movies about racism take place either in the distant past or in the South, so people can watch and be like, well, I'm glad I don't live there, and we don't have to deal with those problems, which we will look back to later in my list, I assure you. But it's still very effective, and it still works really well. So that's my fourth favorite, Mudbound. Go watch it. It's so good.
I'll watch it before the Academy Awards. I hear Mary's getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah, she's the one.
She's the one. Good thing she passed on that Nina Simone movie.
Hannah, are you ready to talk about your number 4?
Sure. My fourth movie is Wonder Woman.
Woo! Nice.
It needed to be in my top 5, and I'm actually surprised it's fourth. That's an interesting. I don't know how that happened, but it did.
Did you think it would be higher or lower?
I guess I thought it would be higher just based on the amount of impact that it had, both on me and like culturally and globally. Mm-hmm. I thought it would be higher, but there's so many. I'm happy that it's fourth because I think other years it would have been. There's been so many bad movies. It would have been first or second, which would have been a valid like that. It's valuable enough. I mean, it's great enough that it would be valid to have it as first or second. But I think a lot of years I didn't relate to as many movies last year. I didn't have as many characters that I loved or was really compelled by, and so I'm glad that I struggled to place it because it is a testament to how interesting movies were this year. For the first time, I feel like in a long time, we had so many strong kind of movies that stepped away from kind of the formula, which is what you've talked about this year more so than in the past. But so it's fourth, and I don't know. I don't want to go too much into it because we're already an hour in, and you said be a little quicker on our 5 and 4.
It's fine.
But I mean, I think it kind of speaks to itself, and we've talked. I mean, it's come up in every podcast I've done with you guys, whether it was the Justice League. I'm sure it came up in Star Wars. I mean, it's come up in everything, and so I think that it's kind of become, kind of the fuck you to everyone that said, movies about female superheroes won't make money. I think it's kind of stepped ahead and kind of set the precedent of like, this is what a superhero movie is. This is what it should be. Like, this is the level of quality that we should be holding them all to. Hint, hint, DC, come on. And so I think, in a way, I think it will be as iconic, and I don't know if everyone would agree with me, but I think it would be as iconic as The Dark Knight, as Christopher Reeve's Superman, as kind of these really important movies in our culture throughout time. I think it will be that important.
I fully agree. I remember talking about this year that it was not fair, but Wonder Woman was an important movie, and it really needed to succeed, and it needed to be good on top of that. Like it just couldn't make a bunch of money and be bad.
Like a Zack Snyder.
Exactly. Well, that's the exact point. That was the point I was really trying to make, is because I was like, unfortunately, men are always, no matter if they get a bad movie, they're going to reboot it and they'll just try again. But if we had so many years where people said this can't work, and I was like, it's unfair, but we all need to go see this movie, and it, by God, it better be good. Like on top of that, because I was like, otherwise we're all going to support a bad movie, and then it will still die. Because it's, we told you it wouldn't work, and here's the proof. But thankfully, it was good, and it made money. And yeah, it's the first female-led superhero film on the major screen, directed by a woman. It was a very important film this year, and I don't think it was fair that it had that much pressure on it, but it stood and delivered, and I think that's what made it really great. It didn't make my list.
Yeah, Hannah, you just made my job easier because Wonder Woman's my number 9. So I was going to talk about next. I won't say too much because I think you summed it up beautifully. It is such a brilliant, wonderful, fuck you to the whole system.
It's not even that. Like I'm not going to say that you're wrong because this is up for interpretation. I don't want to be a dick like that, but it's for me. It's just it doesn't feel like it comes out of a place of malice or of resentment. And that's why it works so well for me. I love this movie too. It did not. I don't think it would make my top 10 because like I think the third act kind of falters a bit. But I love it for what it does, and I love it for it gets the character right so well.
Wonder Woman won't make your top 10, but The Last Jedi is your number 5 with that third act. Oh, bitch, please. Are you serious? Anyway, we're all entitled to our opinion. And I want to say, I don't think, when I say it comes from a fuck you, I don't think that means malice. I think that also can mean, it's like, oh, by the way, we're so good, we don't even have to be a dick, you know? But yeah. Continue, sorry.
But yeah, it's... but yeah, what I do love about the movie is that it gets the character right. It gets this level of her compassion, her faith in humanity, her belief in goodness that is something that's like seems like it should be very basic stuff, but the DCEU has struggled with so far. Because and yes, I'm gonna dovetail into complaining about this again because Justice League came out, so I'm entitled to that. But
Can't talk about the best without the worst.
Yeah, it's just it feels like so much of the DCEU is about a deconstruction of like what does it mean to be a good person and why do they do good things and how does Superman know he doesn't like killing people if he's never tried it before?
I think that's what they were trying to say, but it wasn't even incoherent enough. It was like that.
No, I reject that cynicism. I reject that high-minded BS. It's just like she is a good person. She exists to do good things. And sometimes she falters, and sometimes she makes bad judgments, but that does not stop her. There's her character. Make that movie, and they did, and it worked.
You don't have to explain why someone wants to be good. Sometimes you just want to be good.
Yeah. And there's no tragic backstory. There's just like, no, there is a wrong in the world that needs to be righted, and she is the person to do it, and she does.
But there is some tragedy, and I think that's actually a big part of the reason the movie works. I want to talk about the ending, because that's the part of the movie is most important to me, which is that, you know, she loses so much. She loses her family. She loses, at least so far, the love of her life, you know, and her idealism, her faith that humanity can always be good is seriously shaken. And yet she goes on. You know, at the end, you know, she leaps, you know, toward the camera, and you know, she says, "This is my mission forever." You know, she endures, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. It's not a pure victory, and yet she has the strength to keep going. I mean, I think it's a really beautiful story.
Yeah, if you ignore everything that the Justice League tried to do, which is that she spent 100 years like drinking tea and being sad in her bathrobe, and then suddenly was fine again. We're just going to ignore that ever existed or happened, and it does not affect any Wonder Woman that stands on its own. Because I loved that, and then they just were like, nope.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, they did reshoots, and they could not fix that. I mean, it's such an obvious, like, horrible. Oh.
Yeah.
The question still remains: what was she doing in the intervening century? What was she doing during World War II?
Yeah. According to Justice League, just like weeping over Chris Pine. Come on.
We're not going to talk about that. I also refuse that reality.
Thank you.
So, Max, what is your third favorite film of 2017?
Get out of here, Ben. No, the movie was Get Out. Number 3. Get Out was spectacular. I don't think I can actually say... I don't think I could say anything that we all haven't said for it before, that any other critic has said. It's a great film, and once again, this falls into, I guess, my theme of the year, which is a horror movie doing something else. I think horror genre is one of the weakest genres out there, and I completely understand why. It doesn't make a lot of money. They don't get a lot of big budgets, so you have to do something different. But lately, these years, the horror movies have been getting better. It's been taking people like, what's the guy who's directing Aquaman?
James Wan.
James Wan. doing interesting things like Insidious and going, I can't change. I mean, it's going to be a scary movie. I'm here to scare people, but what can I do that's different? Let's implement some actual camera angles, some interesting things with the camera and the cinematography and the editing, and going from there, as well as some great ideas. And I've been seeing that trend with like the Babadook and It Follows. It's going, instead of just going, there's a man killing a bunch of teens, let's go make this a metaphor for something. Let's talk about this. And Get Out really, I think, is just the pinnacle of that, which is talking about social issues. It's a social thriller.
I think Jordan Peele even coined the term.
He did.
Social thriller.
I don't think he goes.
Brilliant.
He said I didn't mean to. He goes, but that's really the best way to describe it. It shouldn't be nominated for best comedy. I mean, based on the sole fact that it's technically a horror film, there's the only funny horror film I would ever put into that, Cabin in the Woods, and it's not even really technically a horror movie, more parody film, in my opinion. But so Get Out it does it. And I mean, I think my favorite part in that entire movie is the part where he finally just realizes how deep it goes. Because I think we all realize how deep it goes, and we're all just terrified, even if you've never been in that situation. And I think in that moment, that is the part where we can all at least relate that, oh crap, he's being hypnotized, and they're going to give him a body transfer, and he's going to die. Oh no. That doesn't happen. That's not a spoiler, I promise. But it's so good, and I think everyone should see it because it's a fantastic film. And I'm so excited to see what Jordan Peele does next. I think it's so cool to see what he's off doing outside Key and Peele.
I don't want to say too much because I have a strong, factually based feeling that this film is going to come up again very soon. But I will say this: I mean, yeah, it's a brilliant movie. It's a brilliant concept. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a mind blowing script, and also it's just a brilliant example of a great filmmaking craft. The craft of building suspense. Riling up tension in a very methodical way, and it's pretty grand. And
great performances on top of that.
Yeah.
I mean, even the guy from Office Space, whose name no one ever remembers, but we all know him as the bread stapler guy, is in there for a little bit.
Stephen Root?
Yeah.
I know Stephen Root.
You've
seen Stephen Root for years, man.
No, we all know who he is, but you're the only one that knows his name.
King of the Hill?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know his name was Stephen Root.
There we go. Sorry. See, we all know him.
I know his face.
Yeah. He was in True Blood. We all know him. I think you're the only person who now knows his name. But now maybe everyone who listens to us knows who Stephen Root is. Unless he
keeps getting worse, so someone's got to know his name.
He's fantastic, and again, he brings a great performance for what little he's given in this movie, and I think that speaks to the script and the directing and just the whole thing. I'm all for good horror movies, and I'm so excited to see them kind of just trying a little harder, which I can't believe we've had to wait how long for someone to go, what if we tried harder? Maybe then these movies will be more profitable.
Mo, what's your third favorite film of the year?
My third favorite film surprised me as much as anyone else. It's Mother.
What?
Whoa! Yeah. That was third on my list too.
It's
wow.
It is one of the most deeply unpleasant cinematic experiences I've ever had. It left me uncomfortable and having difficulty sleeping with the lights off. It's likely shaved off at least a year of my life. It's pretentious and self-involved and self-congratulatory, and it stuck with me in a way that not a lot of films have. And there's something to that, and it's deeply uncomfortable. But that's the entire point of it. Is that it's I don't know. I don't know what else to say beyond what we already talked about on the podcast. It's well shot. It's well acted. It's a very simple premise, but they realize it really well through this surrealistic quality. It's deeply disturbing, but that's the point of it. It works somehow against all odds, despite everything against it. It works.
Oh well, I mean, I'll say something like,
go for it.
I'm shocked too. This is a plot twist. I mean, you kind of described my feeling, which is I remember even when we were doing the podcast, I was saying I didn't like the movie, but I realized, like, in retrospect, wow, for a movie I claimed not to like at the time, I sure was defending it a lot. And then, like, on the bike ride home, I was like, oh, this is so horrible, I hate it. And then all of a sudden, I just thought, there's something to it. And I've seen it twice since, and it's.
Oh, you're a braver man than me.
I still hate it. I see its billboards, and I still roll my eyes.
You saw it, right, Hannah?
No, I actually ended up seeing part of it illegally on my computer, but then I had to leave.
Because of the movie or because of something else?
Because of something else. So I only saw bits and pieces. I'm just not a huge fan in general of
Jennifer Lawrence.
Yes.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know why you were. Are we gonna get torn apart here in the comment section?
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan. So it's not. I knew it wasn't gonna be anything to me. I knew that, and I think the most important thing that I've taken from Mother, even though I haven't finished it, is marketing and the influence of marketing on the success of a film and how that plays into it, and how I think a lot of people hated it and had their reactions based solely on what they expected going into it, and what power you have as a director or as a company who's pushing their film into kind of influencing how it's received. I think that, people in my theater who were watching previews for it laughed at it. They hated it, and they didn't I don't know. It didn't, the marketing for it was not successful in my opinion, and I do think it impacted how it was received.
I think part of the point is that you're supposed to go into it as blind as possible.
Then do the old adage of having minimalistic trailers and having almost nothing shown. Why present it like an old B horror movie, or what was that choice about?
You're right. I did kind of. I was like, I wonder if this is a horror movie going into it, based solely on the trailer. I watched one, and then again, that was it. But yeah,
I just knew it as a psychological horror from the reviews, so I did not expect exactly what happened. I don't think anyone could.
I was like, yeah, who could have predicted what was going to happen? I knew 5 minutes in that was all going to happen.
Yeah.
Every piece of it, the stone, the baby, the riots, all of it.
It sticks with you, and it's not just because it's so shocking, but just the way they shoot, just the everything in the third act is just so kinetic and constant and active, and that's the reason why I wasn't able to sleep that night. Not just because I was anxious and on the edge of my seat for the rest of the night, but because my adrenaline had shot through the roof. Because everything is happening all at once, and it just keeps escalating and going bigger and bigger and bigger, and it works so well.
Yeah, it's just, that last act is, I think, just like kind of a masterclass in directing an action, like just the way it goes from, the people are getting kind of rowdy, they're stealing things, they're smashing things, the SWAT team is coming through the door, the people have developed a weird religion,
Also she's going into labor.
It's just like, oh my gosh, yeah. If we could talk about Mother all day, there's so much packed into that damn house.
Oh, I hope not.
Hannah, what is your third favorite film of the year?
Well, my third is Get Out.
Yeah.
I loved this movie, and I think Max talked a lot about and covered a lot of the reasons why I love it, and why I responded so strongly. I think that there was power in this film, even just watching it in Portland, because Portland is
so white.
Everything that all of the villains in that movie is Portland. And so I'm sitting watching this movie with somebody in my life who is white, and I saw it twice in the same weekend. The second time with my husband, the first time with someone in my life who's white, who is the quintessential Portland liberal, who, you know, outwardly says, like, is very politically correct and very, you know, all of these different things, and then behind closed doors, I mean, I remember once I was with him, and he corrected a woman for calling a homeless person a bum, and said that that was not okay, which, whatever, that's fine. And then behind closed doors, he then ranted about his hatred of homeless people and how, like, he just wished that, you know, Portland would get their shit together and figure it out. I mean, this is Portland in a way. Like, that's not, you know, everybody in Portland, but it is. And I'm sitting here watching this movie with him, tense as shit. Like, are you getting this? Like, are you getting that this is you?
This is actually your intervention.
Yeah, I know. We should have left him and
like walk into his house, surprise.
Yeah. Because that is, I mean, very prevalent, especially in, especially in a city like Portland that thinks it's this, you know, mecca of wokeness, when in reality, I mean, it perpetuates racism and sexism at every corner, you know, and gentrification and all of those things play into it. And so watching this movie in a predominantly white city that does all of those things was powerful in and of itself, because you're watching it in context. Not only are you watching it in Portland, but also you're watching it in Hollywood, and you're watching white Hollywood respond to this, whilst they're still perpetuating all of these other ideas at the same time of, you know, undercurrents of racism and sexism and discrimination. And so it's kind of like, it says so much that it was put in the Golden Globes as a comedy, because it is really showing that Hollywood will be like, yeah, we get it, we're with Jordan Peele, like tweeting congratulations to him, but then undercut him in the same sentence and, you know, don't give it credit. So
well,
I think...
I will say, technically, I tried not... Everyone always loves to put stock into the Hollywood Foreign Press and the Golden Globes, but as I was telling Ben, the Hollywood Foreign Press is just less than 100 foreign, meaning non-American reporters. And they're the ones that decide where they go. Unlike the Academy Awards, you can really campaign for those categories, but because there is, you know, a comedy and a drama, these people just decide where it goes. And that's what made me so confused. I was like, so these foreign reporters saw this movie and thought, that was hilarious. Or was there just the simply, well, it's not necessarily a drama, which at the same time I was like, how is that not even a little bit of drama that you can go comedy?
I mean, does it speak to, you know, the racism in Hollywood and everywhere that, like calling it a comedy, even though certainly there is comedy in it, like almost seems like it's trying to dismiss it in a way by like saying it's just a comedy as opposed to, you know, I don't know. I mean,
I get the sense to some extent that they're trying. This is like they know they're trying to give it more of a shot. Sure. Because like the sort of splitting it up into drama and comedy, I feel like that's their way of trying to honor more movies, of trying to widen the net. The downside is that you get examples of Get Out or The Martian or something like that being nominated for a comedy when it clearly isn't. And they're just like, okay, but if we put it into the drama category, we have to shove out something else. So
or shut it out.
Yeah.
So. I see what you mean. I mean, that's...
I get
that's
that. At the same time, this movie is not a comedy. This movie is not about something funny.
No. Not even like the overarching like theme. Like not even most of the acting in it. You get the funny friend and his banter with the main character when he can get a hold of him, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then even the funny friend at a certain point goes, "Okay, I'm really concerned." Like he loses his funny a little bit. Yeah. So sorry, we totally took over a little bit.
No, it's fine. I just think that I mean, I am a big fan of horror, and I think that this is horror done right in a way. The terror of that last scene when that cop car pulls up.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there petrified that he is going to either get hurt or blamed for everything that had just happened.
Which was the original ending of the film.
Yeah, it was, which is very interesting. And do you think it would be in the comedy category had something bad at the end did happen? Like, if he was shot or if he was, arrested, I don't know. But to leave that film with that moment of just pure horror and then have it be in the comedy category, it's just showing so much about Hollywood. And though I do see what you're saying, I also think separating comedy and dramas, you have to look at that also. I mean, Peter Sellers is my favorite actor of all time, and we generally have looked at comedy and Mel Brooks and all of that as even the people we like as a lesser art form. And I think that this was kind of an example of, no, it's not a comedy, but comedy's not lesser, but it's also horror's not lesser necessarily. Like, just because these are the two genres that you're immediately looking at does not mean, it should be, underestimated, which I think it was whilst they were patting him on the back.
Yeah.
Patting him on the back with one hand and underestimating it and kind of undercutting it with the other.
And while we're on the subject of this, I'm pretty sure I, Tonya is nominated for a comedy.
But I think actually, I haven't seen I, Tonya, but I think it has more comedic elements to it.
It definitely has. It has more comedic elements. I have.
Okay.
It's about abuse. It's about surviving abuse. And they, you laugh at it every so often, but, the trailers are making it seem a lot funnier than it is.
That's what I heard.
So that also seems like a misplacement.
Yeah. It's true. So
there's a lot of, this is the Golden Globes. This is the organization that nominated the Ides of March for Best Picture just so they could have Ryan Gosling and George Clooney on the red carpet. I mean, they do a lot of questionable things. But before we move, I will say, you're so right. I mean, watching Get Out in Portland, of all places, really has an extra resonance, and definitely I can say for me as a liberal white person watching it, I look at the movie and go a little bit oh shit.
I felt uncomfortable and guilty.
Sure. And I imagine
when I saw him feeling uncomfortable and guilty.
I'm glad you noticed. It wasn't for you, but I'm glad you noticed.
I remember the moment. It's the scene it's the party scene where all the different old people are just interviewing him. And
Yeah.
I
I had my hand in my face, my hand the whole time.
Exaggerated.
No.
Absolutely
My
not.
brother,
It wasn't a shame of, oh my gosh,
No,
they're
I
blowing
know,
this out of
but
proportion.
it's
It was just more of, it's all
like,
the.
this is how it is.
Well, I've seen these things. I'm like,
Portland,
but it's
all over.
It's not. Well, I think it's just I think maybe as a woman you've gotten a comment regarding generally your gender, but it was if somebody took all the comments you've ever received about your gender and put it in one scene. It's it hurts so much more. And I think that's the point. That's the only way you're gonna be by the way, this isn't okay. The way you're feeling is how you should feel whenever you hear any of these things, and that's the point. And so, good job. You made me really uncomfortable.
Well, moving on to my 8th favorite film of the year, it's The Florida Project, which
seen it.
it's so good. A.O. Scott in the New York Times wrote something really brilliant about the movie recently, which is he described it as kind of in the tradition of Eloise or Tom Sawyer, and it's really a movie about mischief. And I absolutely agree. I mean, it's
I'm just remembering how the movie ends, and it's not specifically the ending, but what's the final conflict, and it's you're not going to see that in Tom Sawyer.
No, you're not. But I mean, this is my point. I mean, it's a very, very grim situation. It's about these kids living in a welfare motel in Orlando, Florida, and you see the.
It was in Kissimmee. It was outside of Orlando.
Outside of Orlando. Yeah. But
I wrote a review. I had to Wikipedia this shit, man.
I wrote a review as well, and but the thing is, these kids, especially the lead actress Brooklyn Kimberly Prince, who's was only 7 years old when they shot it, I think. They have such spontaneity and vitality, and they're so alive and kind of in accordance. The movie doesn't hook itself to like a beginning, middle, and end rigid screenplay. It just follows these kids around, whether they're getting ice cream, trying to score free food, or even lighting a building on fire. There's kind of like an episodic, like very like loose, casual feel that makes it feel more real, makes it feel oddly kind of fun because it's fun to spend time with these kids, and gives it kind of a docudrama quality. There's not a lot of score in there, if any. And also, I want to talk about. I wanted to address the ending because the ending is very controversial, and I was a little surprised because I loved it the first time, but on further reflection, I see why it's controversial. But what I think Sean Baker, the director, did really well is he shot the most of the film on 35mm. At the very end, he switches to iPhone footage, kind of signaling that we're leaving the real world and we're sort of entering almost a different headspace. Maybe it's these kids' hopes, their imagination in some way. We don't know for sure, but
it's definitely not reality.
Yeah. But I mean, it's
considering what happens.
But it's ambiguous. You don't know, is this something they say they wished had happened, or is this something they just internally imagine? We don't know what that's supposed to represent. But I think you're right, Mo. It does end on a grim note, but in this sort of fantasy, it ends with there's a sense of these kids, taking ownership of their world in the only way they can, which is in their minds. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and it's one of many reasons why the movie affected me and why I think it's a great piece of work.
I wasn't as entranced by this movie, but I think it's well put together, and I love how it's shot.
Isn't it amazingly shot?
Just like the sequences of them walking past these ostentatious storefronts, just like they're like a giant wizard's hat for a magic store,
or the giant orange world.
Yes,
it's brilliant.
And just like the Florida Everglades, all the where they pretend it's a nature safari, basically. Willem Dafoe does a great job.
Yeah.
I'm putting together my end of the year list. Willem Dafoe almost made it as supporting actor just for this and for coming out of Death Note looking okay, which is an impressive feat. Don't get me wrong. I like the parts of this movie more than I do the whole, I think. But it's a good movie, and I'm glad it's put together. And I'd like to see what comes next, because Sean Baker also did Tangerine.
Tangerine, yeah,
which I heard a lot of good things about. So I want to see what he does next, because now all eyes are on him.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this movie. I know nothing about it other than Willem Dafoe has some buzz, and that the young girl that you mentioned also had some buzz. She's not quite hitting it though.
Yeah,
It's hard.
I think it's the best performance. I think it's one of the best performances of the year.
Everyone says that because of her is what makes that movie, and but generally awards tend to forget about the children. Let's look at Room. That kid. Even Brie Larson said, she goes, that I wouldn't be anything in that movie if I didn't have him to play off of.
Sure.
And he did his job, so she said that he should have been nominated, and I loved how much she fought for him. So. That's all I know.
Did you see the Florida Project, Hannah?
I didn't. I missed it. It's on my list of must-see.
It's on my list now.
It's super good. It's super good. Check it out. Max, what's your second favorite film of the year?
Much to, I'm sure, everyone's chagrin at this table, I'm going to give it to Shape of Water.
No, not everyone. Mo really liked it, right?
I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I didn't really like it. I think you go talk. This is not my turn.
I really loved it. I mean, a lot of the elements of this movie were kind of, I don't know, I think designed for me. I've always loved Guillermo del Toro since Pan's Labyrinth. Hannah and I had a nice lengthy discussion on on the stuff he did before Pan's Labyrinth and then afterward. And I love watching his evolution. I love seeing him get the credit that I think he deserves. I love his use of prosthetics and puppetry and practical effects that is a dying art a lot. I was recently watching The Lord of the Rings, the director's cut of The Fellowship of the Ring, and I was like, man, the CGI on this is not holding up, but the Uruk-hai in it look fantastic, and that was all prosthetics and makeup and who knows how many hours of that just to make that work. But it's holding up better than the CGI is now, and so I think there is something to be said about that. I mean, let's look at Mad Max. And so I think Guillermo del Toro believes in a lot of that. I think he has a lot of beliefs that I think I really just, like, he wants to put this on the screen, and I'm like, I want to see that. Like, so I'm already predisposed to like him. And this one was just wonderful. I'm also a hopeless romantic, so to see Sally Hawkins find someone that she feels is the most appropriate missing piece to her, and that person is a fish man. And towing that line between making him a fish man, but also when they have sex, you're not too grossed out. I think there's a lot of thought and a lot of talking that went into the making of this movie.
I just want to say that gesture she does with her hands and stuff, that is like lodged in my brain. I cannot think about anything else now. I'm just like,
oh yeah,
like even like, and
the gesture that Ben is talking about, I can't describe it, but it's talking about his penis, and it is hilarious. And Octavia Spencer playing off of her is really great. I think it's just her. I feel like the love between him and her is fairly pure in a way that is fantasy. Like, that's, I find more fantastical than falling in love with a fish man, but just the fact that she can and that she does. She has her routines, and it feels fantastical in a normal way. She dances and watches old movies with her homosexual neighbor, who they never say is a homosexual, but very obviously is.
Yeah.
Every choice that Guillermo del Toro makes is intentional. I think the use of green and what it signifies in the movie is evil. The bad guy has green Jell-O when Richard Jenkins is willing to sell out all his scruples and what's right. Humanity-wise, his Jell-O that he has to design is green. It's just like, I'll do whatever.
With Michael Shannon.
No, Michael Jenkins. Richard Jenkins. Sorry.
When he's doing the ad for Jell-O, they say that he has to paint it green.
He has to paint it green, and he goes,
Because for a second
sorry.
I was like, wait, Richard Jenkins isn't evil. And
I'm so sorry.
I get it. I get it now.
He goes to the pie shop because he's
The
got
key
a crush
lime
on
pie.
the
He
guy.
keeps going for the key lime pie.
And the guy turns out to be a
racist homophobe, but
yeah.
And so, but because of that, I catch that the second time. I don't know. It affected me in a good way that once it was done, I immediately wanted to watch it again. And I had a lot of great movies this year, and I can't say all of them did that. And my favorite part is like the last 2 minutes of the movie. I went into it once, and once I saw it, I was like, I need to see it again. I feel like I missed everything because there was just so much. But both times I cried at the last part where Richard Jenkins says a little poem about Sally Hawkins, and it gets me. And so, yeah, I'm sad. Maybe it's not technically the best movie of the year, maybe not even the best performances, but I loved it. And so, even though it doesn't have the number one spot in my mind, it was so good. And I know that I'll own it, I'll watch it more times over, and I think rewatchability is more important to me. I saw Mother, and however you feel about that, I am never watching that again.
I can't watch that movie again.
I watched it more.
Apparently Ben can just pop it in anytime.
Mr. Fancy Pants over here.
I guess I'm just a masochist.
But something like Amore, which I did love, never watching that again, ever. I can't handle that. And so, but knowing that for some reason I will be watching this over and over again, I think it's that nice fine line of old Del Toro, but meeting the new Del Toro, and also hitting this weird zone where everyone likes it. It's crowd pleasing at the same time. And it's magic to see some directors hit that note.
I may not like The Shape of Water.
I know you don't like The Shape of Water,
but you never have to apologize for being a sap in front of me because I like Titanic.
Oh, I met somebody who's never seen Titanic.
It's a 2.5 hour commitment. I can see not seeing.
Actually, it's almost a 3 hour commitment.
Well, but I just assumed everyone had. How do you become the highest grossing movie of all time and someone not have seen it? I figure at this point someone's like, I saw it, I hated it, but I at least saw it.
Any more Shape of Water thoughts before we move on?
I liked it. I had fun. That's it.
Hannah?
I think it'll probably get an award for makeup because for the Fishman costume.
Oh yeah.
For the pecs,
I think
for the butt.
for the glutes, I think it'll also probably pick up some art awards. I mean, art design
I could
is.
see that.
I think sometimes the award for like, production design and art direction and costume, they all fall generally to the same movie, and it's usually to something that's subtle, but you can notice what's going on, or something like, here it is, like La La Land, but it's beautiful but obvious.
Yeah. I wouldn't watch it again. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
I definitely think the performances were solid, but I don't feel like she was the star of the movie or even the fish man. I think it was, the main villain. Like, I understood the main villain's background, motivations, all of that. I mean, his, connections with Dimitri and even Richard Jenkins' character, they all seemed more fleshed out to me. And I kind of felt like it was their movie, and this love story was secondary to that because there was so many more layers presented with those characters. I kind of felt like was just a character where things happened to her. I mean, I'm glad that, she found love.
I guess.
I'm not a love story person. I mean, I'm glad she found love or whatever, but I mean, it's just every step of the way it was kind of like what had happened to her or how other people related to her. It wasn't so much, her story and, like her background was, in 2 sentences, she was an orphan down by the river.
And somebody cut her vocal
Yeah, and who would do that to a baby? Like, and then never again. Like,
Whereas opposed with Michael Shannon, we even know the type of candy.
Exactly. We know so much, and I was so much more interested in Michael Shannon and Dimitri's conflict, and I got more, I was more satisfied with their kind of standoff at the end, and even though you didn't actually see the, Dimitri's final moments alive, I felt like that was more of a story in my mind. And I liked all the fish references, like her gills, the scars on her side, the hole in the cheek, and grabbing him by the finger. Like,
oh my God.
I liked all those.
He's done that multiple times, by the way. I was like, does he have a thing for that?
He seems to.
I was like, why does he keep shooting people in the mouth?
I know. It was really cool, and I loved the use of water with the eggs and the rain and all the different ways it was incorporated, but I wanted to see if it's a story of her and this guy. I wanted to see how her and the fishman connected in like a really deep way. I mean, to me, she was really sexually frustrated and just needed to get it in. And I know
it's true.
A simplified view of it, but it was just like, damn, girl, like, I feel you gotta get it, but come on.
See, I think, and I'm just realizing this now, I think the point of setting up her routine is she wakes up the same time every day. She does the exact same thing. She makes her eggs. She masturbates in the bathtub, which is apparently part of her daily routine.
In the egg timer,
yes,
like in the time it takes.
She only has enough time to do this while her eggs cook, which is not a metaphor. And good night, everybody. But I think that's maybe kind of sets up the fact that you don't need to know much about her, is that this is her life every day. It's the same thing. And it's more of, she's kind of a blank canvas. I mean, Michael Shannon kind of sees her as this weird sexual object. Octavia Spencer sees her as a sounding board that she can... She has known her for 15 years. Like, the conversations they have, it makes it sound like they haven't seen each other in a week. And Octavia Spencer can talk to Sally Hawkins for 8 hours straight about the frustrating things about her life. And that's just who she is to her. And to Richard Jenkins, I think she kind of ultimately convinces him over to her side, which is, she kind of represents hope and this purity of, she loves the fishman, and they can only communicate with each other. Like, no one else can talk to Fishman except for the woman who can't talk, apparently. And that creates, I think that's what he was going for.
I do think that's what he was going for. I just never felt like she did figuratively have a voice.
Yeah.
And I was just waiting for that moment. Like, I thought at the end the fish man was going to get shot and she was going to take the guy down. And I was like, cool, I'm here for it. But she's like the fish, like the fact that it was the fish man, that was so anticlimactic to me. Just that, bam, like just like neck
Slash,
legs,
yeah.
like done, and then
done.
You are a god.
Yeah, that was a weird line, actually.
That was so
like
strange.
Michael Shannon just realized this.
Yeah, that was so strange. But I just kept waiting to like get that from her because I think you're right. She was kind of a mirror of what anybody wanted her to be, but I wanted to see her for who she was, not just being in love with a fish.
I really like that monologue she gives, though.
Which one?
The one that Richard Jenkins says for her, that she's signing
All right.
about.
If we don't help him, neither are we.
Yeah.
Yes, that. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know.
That was.
But yes, so that's my number 2.
Mo, what's your second favorite of the year?
The weird thing about this year is that I thought my list would change over time. I saw some movies earlier in the year that were good, that immediately went on like my favorites of, and I thought they would get replaced as time went on, and they did not. They just stuck around, and so my number 2 is Colossal.
I just watched it last night.
I haven't seen it. I didn't watch it in time.
You still have time. There's always time.
It's on Hulu, I think.
Yes, I believe it's still there for free.
But it's for me, it's my favorite kind of movie. It's a movie where there is this larger than life genre idea of this science fiction horror kind of fantasy kind of thing. But it's also very clearly a metaphor for some actual thing. This is classic Twilight Zone, Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of stuff, and I am a sucker for that. The performances are all great. I love Jason Sudeikis in this movie. He's not a nice person, but it's great to watch him, and it feels like a very natural evolution of his persona. Anne Hathaway does a great job. It doesn't look 100% great because of the effects budget, but that doesn't matter because you're there for the human drama, and the human drama is what sells it.
I didn't even think about that. Like, it didn't even occur to me. I was still like, I was okay with everything. It's like, I mean, could you imagine if they had a bigger effects budget?
Yeah, that would be great. So that, it's the kind of movie I want to see, and I want to see more like it, and I really hope we do get more like that. Yeah, that's my number 2.
I won't say too much about this one because not to spoil anything, but this one is going to come up again in a moment. From who you'll find out. But yeah, I mean, it is very much about the human drama, and also it reminded me of Get Out and Mother in an odd way, like using sort of a fantastical way of talking about
Real problems.
Yeah, very much so, and I think that's kind of an interesting trend this year, and there are other films like that as well. It's kind of a trend of late. Hannah, what's your second favorite of the year?
My second favorite goes to Coco. Yes. So,
I loved Coco. It didn't make it was one of the 2, as we've all talked about, the 5 that number 5 spot. Who was it going to? And I didn't put Coco there, but that was definitely the argument.
Yeah, same here.
I went with my husband and Ben, and we were at the living room theater, and even with waiting forever, and I had a drink, and we took our time, and my husband ordered food, we still didn't outwait that Frozen short. We still got the last 10 minutes of that damn short, and I'm so glad they're not showing it anymore.
I know, I love how they announce as Coco, no Olaf. Like, that's a selling point now.
It was painful, but oh my god.
Here's the thing for me about the Frozen short. Like,
It's not that bad, but it's so asynchronous with everything else, and it's so mediocre.
It's so mediocre.
It's really long.
It's 20 minutes.
If it's going to be 20 minutes long, it should be great. I'm not actually...
If it's 20 minutes long, it should be stakes higher than we need to find a Christmas tradition.
But also, it can't be 20 minutes long. Like, you cannot expect kids to sit through 20 minutes of previews, 20 minutes of a short, and then a full movie. Like, I was like, are you kidding me? That's a TV show, a movie, and obscenely long previews.
Yeah.
I was just like, no. Play it at the end so we can all leave. But anyway, we survived that and made it to the movie, and I was completely blown away by this film. I cannot even begin to describe not only how well done it is, but how important it is. I love any kids movie that can be good for kids, but that doesn't treat kids like they're stupid.
Steven Universe, cough for cough.
It allows kids, and it trusts kids enough to give them concepts that kids are dealing with. We like to pretend as adults that kids live in these fairy tale worlds of like beautiful simplicity, and the reality is that's not true. And so
what they can handle.
Yeah, or what they can handle.
What
and
they're
so
aware is going on, which loops back to the Florida Project.
exactly.
Anyway.
And to have a film that trusts kids enough to examine death, which is something that kids just as much as adults have to deal with. It's not an adult-only issue.
Yeah.
To examine death in such a way that not only trusts kids, but strays away from kind of this very like white culture of stifling of what, death means to us and how we process death. It's kind of an obsession of mine. My favorite book is Mary Roach's Stiff. Have you guys read it? Because you should.
No.
Oh my gosh.
afraid
Every
now.
human should read it.
Oh, God.
It's traumatizing, but it's brilliant. And
I'll put it on the list.
yeah, traumatizing and brilliant. So
Traumatizing and brilliant, in the good way.
I'm the one who just talked about Mother. So.
yeah, exactly. If you can get through Mother, this is nothing. But I just respected that so much. The music is incredible. I am an adult and I have this soundtrack, and I'm like in the car like rocking out, and when Remember Me comes on, I'm like crying.
Skip it every time just so you don't cry while on the highway.
When Miguel starts singing it to Mama Coco.
No, when he's about to start singing it, that's when it gets me, because like I knew every step that was going to happen. It's like, oh god, he's going to start singing. Oh god. Oh god.
I was just, I mean, it was one of those things I think we were all kind of prepared for, because we're adults who've seen movies and kind of have an idea on how plot works out. And everyone was weeping.
Also, it's
Yeah.
called Remember Me.
It's-
It's
well-
not subtle.
Well,
Yeah.
what I love about that is that you go with Remember Me, and for the whole movie, it's about this one thing, and then it's about a second thing, and then we're just gonna take that new thing and rub salt in your new wound.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the one thing that I thought was the best part was that the movie was named after the grandmother.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's because the original title.
what was the original title?
The original title was Day of the Dead, and they tried to trademark that.
Oh. Well, I'm glad it worked out this way, because that's a much better title. I think it's more inventive to give it to the great grandmother, because it all comes back to her and your ancestors.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think that the fact that it's named Coco, and the fact that it really examines, family trauma and how trauma, is passed through the generations, which is true. I mean, it's so applicable in our time period, where people act like because wherever your family comes from or whatever trauma historically or personally you've gone through within the family generations, it goes away, and this showing that and showing how, this desertion and how they feel like this man, walked out on her, like her dad walked out on her, and how he did mean to come back and how he meant to kind of remedy that situation but was never able to. That impacted the generations so deeply over time. And I think that that's something that I never would have even imagined they would tackle in a movie that's technically geared towards children. And it's something that I'm so glad that we have this movie.
Yeah.
And my brother is not white. And he is constantly in Portland asked, like, what are you? Or where do you come from? And all of those questions. And so having us get closer to seeing these people that, you know, look like my brother and having those heroes or having those connections or having those kids that do come from other cultures outside of kind of Pixar, Disney world that has been whiteness this entire time is a huge step forward, and I hope the success of this movie shows that we don't want these same white stories reimagined and reimagined and reimagined for freaking ever, because this was needed. And I'm so, like,
As long as it can be done respectfully.
I think it is the highest grossing film in Mexico.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, and there's power in that, because a lot of times we don't, like, our excuse for not making those movies is that they won't make money. And, like, looking at how, you know, how Hispanic populations impact the box office has been something that's been growing, and people have been examining that a lot more because they are a huge, you know, portion of the box office. So, yeah.
I think you're so right about this movie, and I love that you pointed out that, you know, kids can handle this kind of thing. You know, I was a camp counselor for many years, and I was surprised, you know, no offense to my coworkers who were my age, but most of the kids oftentimes were smarter than them. You know, I mean, you know, they're very tough, and just the idea of dealing with death and dealing with it in the context of a fun adventure that's a blast and
In
a
a
joy.
funny movie, too.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, you know, it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't shy away from the stuff. And the moment where the concept they bring up, the idea of like the final death, that you only truly fully die when everyone forgets you. I mean, that is so haunting and brilliant, I think.
I don't know if any of you have heard it. One of my favorite album of all time has been The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill by Lauryn Hill. And it's, I think in that one, I think to this day, it's still, there's interludes where they record I think it's an elementary or middle school classroom talking about the concept of love. And the ideas that these kids are throwing out are ideas that I think some adults still have trouble grasping or holding on to in its own way that I think just disproves the fact that it's like you can't say children don't understand love. That's even one of them. Like, what do you say when an adult says, oh, you don't know what love is? And it turns out they do. Like, just because you're young doesn't mean you don't understand concepts or the ideas are wrong. And I think they're all fully there in the fact that they have them there and they talk about it, and it's still relevant today. And it was made in 1999.
Wow.
It blew me away when I heard it the first time. It still blows me away to listen to these kids talk about the concept of love, and they got it. I mean, sure, you're gonna grow up, and we all learn different things as you get older. You never think, it's never covered in health class, but I think to dismiss children is the biggest mistake, and I think Pixar at least has been challenging that, even with Inside Out.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I saw a lot of similarities within this Inside Out.
And I think so maybe that helps Hannah's case for maybe don't dismantle the entirety of Pixar, just fix the broken parts within the ranks.
Well, and he needs to be gone. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
period, end of story.
I
bye-bye.
Yeah,
love
none of this leave of
I
absence.
love what he has done, but yeah, if you fuck up, you get fired. I'm sorry, that's just how it works. Sorry.
All
Anyway.
right. Well, moving on to, I guess, my 7th favorite film of the year. It's War for the Planet of the Apes. It was a surprise to me that it was on my list at all. I mean, to be honest, I really disliked Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but something about this one really got to me, and I think just the story of Caesar, played brilliantly through motion capture by Andy Serkis, the leader of these advanced apes in this post-apocalyptic wasteland. Just the story of him losing his family, being consumed by the need to revenge, and getting to the point where he's able to have compassion for the man who caused them all this pain, and pivot from, I want this guy dead to, focusing on leading his people into this, new and beautiful world. And
That comes at the cost of, the genocide of humanity.
well, they were asking for it. I mean, they were whipping these poor apes and feeding them really shitty looking grains and stuff. I mean,
That's punishable an offense in Portland.
But
I have to eat shitty grains. How dare you?
But and I just think it's a beautiful story, and I love the way it ends with the orangutan, Maurice, watching Caesar die, and saying your son is going to know who his father is and what he did for us. I think that's so beautiful, and that's another teary moment for me, like Coco. So there you have it, War for the Planet of the Apes.
That is like
Movies that-
stupidly biblical.
Movies
that is Old
that
Testament
make
story.
It is Old
Moses
Testament stuff.
leading
Yeah,
the Israelites to
absolutely.
the Promised Land and then dying before he makes it there.
Yeah, and I like that. I think more blockbusters need to look to these like classic stories, because it gives movies this kind of like primal power, just like with Wonder Woman, where it's a classic Joseph Campbell type story of a character leaving home and going on an adventure and being tested, and that's one of the many reasons why it's better than Man of Steel or any of those films.
Have you heard the connection people are saying with because of this movie and Logan? They're like, well, you know what they say: once you grow a beard, time to die. And then it just cuts to Captain America with his new beard. I was like, oh, this does not bode well.
Evans does seem to want to get out of there, so
Yeah, I will say this. There were two 20th Century Fox movies this year set in a bleak apocalyptic wasteland with a main character who's bitter and is essentially going on a road trip with a fierce but still innocent little girl. I preferred Apes by miles. I like it a lot better than Logan.
I can see that.
Max, what's your favorite movie of the year?
My
We're in the final stretch of this.
Final stretch. If only there was some kind of like way to drum up tension for this. I don't. Oh, a drum roll. Yeah. Mine's Colossal. Hey!
I saw that coming.
Oh, who would have seen that one coming? Maybe it's because I have not shut up about Colossal since I saw it.
But you have very interesting things to say about it in your other films.
I love it. It's, again, much like Shape of Water, once Colossal was done, I immediately wanted to watch it again. And also, again, to echo Mo, I think I remember Ben going, oh, wow, this is one of your favorite movies. I was like, oh, yeah, definitely one of my favorite movies. Once I saw it, I knew it was one of my favorite, but I had no idea that I would pick it as my top movie of the year. But here we are. Anne Hathaway gives a great performance. I think I really connect to it. I'm now going on to 29, and I'm not freaking out about that. I don't freak out about the number. It really doesn't bother me because I have so many bigger things to be scared about other than being a number, really. Like when my president is who he is and says what he does. And then I also have to deal with the fact that, it's like just dealing with like modern love and just my life that I have to deal with. It's weird to see and wonderful to see someone kind of on screen as messy as I am. I mean, I always feel like...
You haven't destroyed any cities lately, have you?
No, I mean, not to my knowledge. But that was the thing is, I don't feel like I'm a kind of like a bitter person, but I also like love. I feel very, like, sometimes my life is really messy and maybe I don't make the best choices. And so to see someone on screen kind of struggling in their early 30s, late 20s, because they just maybe don't know how to make the best choices and they kind of have to move home really spoke to me, obviously, kind of dealing with some of the similar stuff, but I'm also not a monster. But what I really, really loved about this movie, I went to the Hollywood to see it. It opened with a short film, which...
Oh yeah, the shorts.
The shorts. It was like a 5 little like vignettes that all
like
deal with
1 minute
technology.
long each.
Yeah, they all deal with technology, but they all kind of are related to one another. And I was just like, it made me happy. And I was just like, you know what? Pixar has all these great short films before their movies. Why aren't
And
we?
the Olaf movie.
Well, that one is not a Pixar short film. That is Disney. But
It was before a Pixar movie.
Shut your butt. Anyways, but point is, I like, I love short films. I think if it's good, why not put it before a movie? And so the fact that I got one before this was great. You go into this movie, the trailer doesn't. You're not surprised that a monster has appeared over North Korea and is destroying the city.
South Korea.
Or South Korea, sorry. South Korea, and is destroying
we're
it.
friends with them.
Yes, that's the only way that would work. Otherwise, Anne Hathaway getting into North Korea would
That
have
would
been a
just be-
whole different story.
We like South Korea. They gave us Gangnam Style.
Don't remind me. But you see this trailer, and the trailer's about a messy woman who goes back home to kind of restart her life, only to find out, bum, 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 she's a monster that is currently destroying South Korea at a certain time of the day. That is what the trailer tells you, and that's not even, but that's not the twist of the movie. There's a whole other twist that comes into play. Jason Sudeikis is part of it, and and then on top of that, we're talking about, it uses it as a metaphor for toxic relationships and toxic masculinity.
Toxicity, abuse, drug addiction, or alcoholism, I should say.
Yeah.
But just for me at least, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No,
but
you're good. Please, I had to hold myself back on yours because I didn't want to give away all my good points.
For me, it's the idea of self-destructive behavior as affecting more than just yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it's that her drunkenly stumbling home at 10 in the morning after a night of binge drinking it's bad for her, obviously, because it's getting in the way of her life, of her relationships.
Of growing.
Of growing up. But then you see how it affects the other people. And there's the figurative sense of how much, and in the first scene, how much it distresses her boyfriend to be with her like that. And then we later find out he's kind of a dick, but still.
Yeah.
But it's also the very, it's metaphor made literal. It's the very literal act of her drunkenly stumbling home is destroying soul.
Yeah. Also I think Jason Sudeikis is really what I think pulls it all together. Like, is really what ties it up with the bow.
Well, you kind of have to with at one what.
No, he's so delusional and he's so bad. He's so bad, but in such a real way. And I think that's I mean, we can only look at Get Out and go, hypnotism is bad, and putting somebody's consciousness into their body is terrible. But nothing any of us probably have to worry about ever.
Well, but I mean,
y'all are white.
No, I mean even
but all, I mean, as you rightly mentioned, Mo, we're talking about, I mean, metaphor. Obviously, the Get Out is an extreme version of something very real.
Exactly.
And as is Colossal. I mean, they're both about things that people do have to worry about.
Yeah, but I will say, and what I think, I mean, other than taking a fantastical approach to highlight a very real problem, the villain of Colossal is very real. I feel he's scary because of how terrible he is, how terrifying it is, and I think they really
We've all met a guy like that.
Well, and I've been very lucky to never meet a guy like Jason Sudeikis who feels some form of entitlement to me, or he's that nice guy that feels like he deserves it because he's nice, but that therefore makes everything bad because you feel you deserve it. But I feel like he's someone that could appear. But I've met plenty of men who need to do whatever they can to make themselves feel big. And let's face it, then just to have that echoed later in the year, very, very prominent and very relevant. And so I guess, but the real thing is I'm like, how often am I ever going to get a movie where a movie is about a woman who's a monster that destroys South Korea, but that's not what it's about. It's about something so much more. And I laughed, and I got uncomfortable, and I got scared, and then the ending line is probably just the best part. Just someone goes, "Do you want a drink?" And she just, because she knows she can't drink. And it's just, I was like, it felt very, like, I just connected to her, and I connected to the whole situation a little bit more. And I appreciate, again, taking an idea and doing something different with it. Taking this sci-fi thing and turning it about toxic relationships. is so cool and so fantastic. I'm so excited to see what this writer and director does next. He did horror movies. He did horror films before that. It made me want to go back and check them out, even though none of them are as lauded as this one. And the fact that it has stuck with me this entire year, and I think I've watched it 3 times. It's the movie I've watched the most this year, so obviously I must have really, really enjoyed it.
Mo, what's your favorite film of the year?
Like I said, I expected this to change over the year because I saw this, my number one film, early in the year, and I thought by the end I would find something else that I liked better, but no, it stuck with me, and that is Get Out.
What? No, I'm not surprised at all.
It's just everything I would want in a movie. I'm not big into horror movies. I don't know if it's anxiety or what, but I don't do well with being scared, but I felt like I had to see this, and it just works on so many levels. Purely on the mechanics of it, it's brilliant. I like we've said before, I work at a theater. We had Get Out for about 6 months, which is insane, but people kept coming to see it. And I would do theater checks, and I would walk in and watch it, and I would see, the scenes that I had already watched before the first time when I watched the movie, and it's like, oh, this is accomplishing multiple things. This isn't just moving the story forward, but it's establishing tone, it's establishing story details that we later go back to, like the weird behavior of the servants makes sense. The guy sprinting in the middle of the night makes sense. The maid checking her hair in the mirror all the time makes sense. The weird scene with the cop who pulls them over after they hit the deer makes sense. Them hitting the deer, it circles back because there's the recurring idea of hit and runs and his experience with that. It all circles back. But it's also it captures the zeitgeist so well of what racism in the 21st century looks like. And we know there's the obvious stuff. We know there's, Charlottesville and the alt-right and all that stuff. But there's also, it's what some commercials have called, what I saw a Funny or Die skit for, diet racism, which is, for people who stop just short of saying the N-word but wonder why there isn't a White History Month.
I think we talked about this video.
It's very funny. Go check it out. But it captures that idea so well, and it was so refreshing to see it. It's just meticulously made and so well put together. I really want to see what Jordan Peele does next. He's got all these offers. I know he's going to do another social thriller. I know that he's spearheading a reboot of The Twilight Zone, which, yes. Absolutely. And I want to see what Daniel Kaluuya does, because he's amazing.
Do you think he'll snag the Academy Award nomination?
He might, just for diversity.
I hope he does.
But he definitely deserves it.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Stephen Root, just the way his character is simultaneously the least and most racist character in the movie.
He's the guy who wants his...
He's the guy. We're going to get into spoilers here, so go watch the movie. Come on, man.
I mean,
it came out in February.
And is like one of the most well-received movies of the year.
Yeah. So the idea is that he's a blind artist who wants to transplant his body into the main character's body, transplant his brain into the main character's body, and he's the least racist on the surface just because he is blind. He does not actually care that Chris is a black guy. It just, he recognizes artistic talent. He wants to be able to see again and see through the eyes of a gifted artist. But at the same time, he's a white person who wants to dictate what the story of black people is through the arts. And there's something creepingly insidious about that. And it's stuff like that makes the movie so brilliant. And it comes from a weirdly humble place. Like this is Jordan Peele's first movie, and he knocks it out of the park. Like no one saw this coming. Yeah, I love this movie. It is the movie of 2017 for me, and I imagine for a lot of people. Yeah, that's my number one.
Hannah?
So my number one is Lady Bird. I don't think that's too surprising. I'm sure, based on our conversation.
You got real excited about talking about Lady Bird.
I did.
I still haven't seen it. So
I
bad.
have.
You have to see it before our women's podcast.
I promise you, I will. I've been trying to see Lady Bird since before Thanksgiving. Like I like that.
Trying.
Try. Okay, you know what?
No, I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, do not. There's no try.
Well, it was a chance, but instead we saw 3 billboards because I'm a monster. Remember?
Continue.
We all know, I think we talked about it with The Last Jedi, how upset I am that Greta Gerwig did not get any sort of nod or appreciation. I think that she
got a screenplay nod, but not directing.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important, especially directing when there aren't like almost no female directors, and we're just consistently undercutting them, and we'll throw things to. Go ahead.
Just this real quick. There were 5 movies this year that have like 80% or higher on Rotten Tomatoes that were directed by women. Catherine Bigelow for Detroit, Patty Jenkins for Wonder Woman, Angela Robinson for Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman, Dee Reese for Mudbound, and Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird. None of them got nominated for Best Director.
Exactly, and that's devastating and not okay. And we're looking at a Hollywood that claims they want to like move out of the Weinstein era, but they're not trusting or at all. You know, you can't do that if you're not acknowledging or trusting good work from women in Hollywood. But anyway, I'm devastated that she wasn't nominated, and I'm not watching the Golden Globes. But it was just a perspective we never get, a story we never get. It was not only a brilliantly kind of well done tale of her, you know, in a sense, coming of age that we don't often get for female characters. We have tons of, you know, male characters going through that age and finding themselves and all of that. And with women, it's usually like, I don't know, but
It's usually just romances, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly, and
that
you know,
boy or whatever.
My husband is just a big fan of, you know, John Hughes and, you know, those 80s movies, and he's huge about Stand By Me and all these stories we get of, you know, young boys finding themselves and being friends, and we don't have that as much. We get the Babysitter's Club or something like that. And this not only was, you know, a story that needed to be told, but it was also well done. It was just a really well done movie. And what I also loved was there was, like, first of all, romance was so secondary. It was just a part of growing up. It wasn't her entire identity, life, or journey. But I also just loved her relationship with her mom. I hated it, but I loved it and related to it in a way that this was so insanely accurate and pinpointed and uncomfortable to watch for me. But this idea of her relationship with her mom and her coming into herself as her own kind of person and finding her own identity and going after something. Have you seen it?
Yes. Yeah.
That she really wanted, like New York, or going outside of kind of this scope of what her mom's life experiences have been, and having the courage and kind of the foresight and drive to make that happen. And still going after her dreams, knowing that her mom might never get it. And so there's this idea that I just loved, this moment when they're trying on dresses where her mom turns to her and says, I just want you to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And when she says, but Mom, what if this is who I am? I just, that
hurts.
It hurts, and it's just such, I think, a common experience, not even just based on gender. I think it's a common experience in general. And I think to capture that idea and have it still end the way it did, of her not getting that approval or that validation from her mom that, you know, go after your dreams, like this is what you want, like be yourself. Like she never got that, and it ended up coming from her in the end. And that last phone call and that last voicemail is her almost being not, I don't know if you want to say the bigger person or her being the parent or whatever. I don't know how you would say that, but it's her saying, I'm going after all of this and I'm doing all this and I thank you for everything you've done, but I'm still not going to get that validation from you. And that's a story and kind of a dynamic that I don't feel like we get exposed to very often. And she captured it in a way that you relate to it, but you feel for her, but you know, don't, like, you're watching it as a story, but you're also feeling so many different things. I just thought it was
Feeling things.
brilliant. Yeah, and
I'm so excited to see this movie one day.
yeah, you have to. I love it. I loved the characters. I loved how flawed she was. She wasn't perfect. She said a blatantly racist thing to her brother. I mean, she's not this perfect character. She perpetuates all of these negative things within her own life. She self-sabotages. She hurts her friends. She does things like that. But it's still, like, she's so human that she can still work her way through it, as opposed to either just being the mean bitch girl, or being, like, the perfect little, like, thing to look up to, or whatever, which is what I feel like we get a lot. She was complex, flawed, and it still worked perfectly.
I did see this. I like what we were saying earlier off camera. I recognize that I am not the target demographic for this movie. I was never a teenage girl, so I didn't go through stuff like this. But I can still appreciate how well it's all put together. There's this really great naturalistic tone that they do in all throughout the movie. The score is basic, but in a good way. It's all the acting is really on point. Everything about it just feels very real, and I could read that, and I could really appreciate that. I just want to talk about my favorite moment for a little bit, which is there's the idea they hammer in, not through the dialogue at all, but through the cinematography, through the editing, is how similar she is to her mother, and how that can be a good thing or that can be a bad thing. And the scene that really emphasizes it for me is at one point she finds out that one of her friends is gay, and they have a conversation about it, and he like breaks down in tears asking her not to tell his parents about it, and she has no choice but to comfort him about it. And then we cut to the mom, and the mom she was a psychological nurse or something?
Yeah, something like that.
A psychiatric nurse, and she's talking to one of Lady Bird's teachers who's suffering from depression. And he says, please don't tell your daughter about this. And she goes, no, of course not. This is just between us. And I love that moment. And a big part of that is because I forget the name of the actor who's playing the teacher. I've seen him in stuff before. He was in Fences. He is a treasure, and he's so good, even though he has like 2 scenes in the whole movie. But that one really struck out to me. That's the other big Kuleshov effect moment. It's a lovely movie, and I really hope it gets featured for stuff. Saoirse Ronan is my front runner, at least for Best Actress, between her and Frances McDormand, like I said. And Laurie Metcalf for Supporting Actress. I feel like it's between her and
Mary J. Blige.
Well, more people would have to see Mudbound for that to be true. But I would see it as between her and Allison Janney for I, Tonya, which it's a similar idea of like a mother with a let's say complicated relationship with her daughter, but it's sort of playing this versus like Laurie Metcalf has this very naturalistic character that, like you said, it's very believable. It works so well on that level. Versus Allison Janney, who's playing cranked up to 11, just absolute monster of a person, and it's what's which one of those will win out. And I'd like to see. I really would like to see Lady Bird win a bunch of stuff because I liked I, Tonya, but I don't know if I would give it that much stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone else talk.
Any more thoughts?
No, I guess I just I want to see more directors being nominated and
Female directors.
and even, I mean, God, like I said, I feel like Jordan Peele's been praised so fakely in my opinion. Like it
so
just
good,
feels
except
like,
we don't want to nominate you.
It's just, it feels like, oh, we're gonna tweet about how brilliant this movie is. Like so many famous people did that, but then you turn around and you're just not giving these people the same, respect, and it's getting boring. Like I'm over these award ceremonies where I'm watching the same people pat each other on the back year after year. Like it's just not. It's getting ridiculous. At this point, with all of the directors you named, with Jordan Peele, with all of these incredible things, doing these unique things, I'm just like, oh, for fuck's sake, do something new, please. So, yeah.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, I want to say something about...
Are you going to do your number 6?
I will, yeah. But I want to say something about the movies that all three of you chose as the best of the year, in the top position, and I think... something that's interesting, I've seen all of them now, and I don't mean this in the political sense. I mean this in a very, very literal sense of the word. Like the movies that each of you chose, each one of them is truly progressive in the best sense of the word, in the terms of the stories that are being told, in terms of who those stories are about, and in terms of who's telling those stories. And I think all of the movies that you mentioned, I think Colossal, Get Out, Lady Bird, they're movies that everyone in the industry should be looking to point the way forward.
Well, and also, I don't know if, Mo, you said it specifically, but I feel like each one of us resounded with, we felt a personal connection to one or more of the characters. I mean, mine was to the female lead, but only because I was like, my life feels messy. And I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and I feel like at times I'm being destructive, but then it's making those choices and also going, oh God, don't be that person at the same time and having to deal with some weird shit.
I think for me, for Get Out, it's definitely capturing the zeitgeist, and I am definitely going to get political here, so strap in, kiddos.
Click.
We have collectively survived the first year of the Trump era, and... for a lot of... I think that for... SNL did a skit on this, like right after the election when Dave Chappelle hosted. They did a sketch where it was a reaction party of like a bunch of white liberals watching
I remember this.
Watching the election, and Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock are there, and like everyone's saying, I can't believe America is this racist. And they go, really? And it's... with Get Out, it's kind of capturing that idea of like, to some extent, I'm not going to speak for the entirety of Black America, but I think there is some sense of feeling like a stranger in a strange land for really any minority, especially in this era, where a candidate who ran on a platform of racism, of we're going to blame all the problems on either Latinos or Arabs or China or the black guy who came before me, it's scary, and you don't know where you stand even among people you think you can trust. And Get Out very much captures that paranoia, and it's maybe a little exaggerated, but at the same time, it's not too far from the truth.
It's taking one or two steps farther, to the point where you can't miss the point, but in that it's not too fantastical.
Yeah, it's
which is weird to talk about hypnosis and brain transplants.
Yeah, but the point of horror movies, that very much stick in people's minds is that they do capture the fears of the era. You have, looking to the classical stuff, you have Dracula as this high society baron who is literally preying on everyone on the lower class. You have zombies as this overpopulation and the lower class being forced to literally eat each other to survive. You have
The Crucible with the.
Well, and you have the trend of the 70s of The Omen and The Exorcist and this overall fear of,
the
you know,
satanic panic.
yeah, the satanic
Yeah.
panic, but also the government. And like in the end of The Omen, you see that Damien is in the White House at that point, and this fear of this overarching kind of, you know, body of power.
I'm trying to remember, like, did Watergate happen by that point, or because I feel like that was late 70s, not early 70s. I don't know my American history. So.
It was definitely mid to late 70s.
Yeah.
It wasn't early 70s.
But that's what I mean. Is that the great horror movies, the great horror stories in general, they do capture the zeitgeist, and Get Out did that in a really, really well.
And I would argue that it's not exaggerated. I would argue in this day and age where, you know, black men are being killed with no sort of, there's no consequences, and Charlottesville happens, and we have the person in the White House saying there's bad on both sides. I would say that in like a real sense, it's not an exaggeration, because
No.
death is there, and whether you look at how, like, no brain transplants aren't
that's
taking
the
place.
that's the
But in a
only
sense-
part of it, exaggeration.
But in
I
a
mean,
sense, what does that say? What does it say that the only exaggeration is that we're not literally
taking
doing
people's brains out and putting
You
them.
know.
Well, and again, is even that an exaggeration? Because again, it is a metaphor.
Yeah.
It is.
There's, I mean, like the big metaphor of the movie is the sunken place. Is this idea where black bodies are there and they are living, but their voices have been silenced. They're robbed of any personality. They're used more at best as a prop, at worst just forgotten about.
Yeah, no agency.
There's something to that.
I think it's
God,
actually.
this movie's so good.
Also, I think it's pretty interesting.
I'm so scared.
Each one of us picked writer-director movies, and a Latino, a black man, and a woman. I mean, those were all our number one spots, and I think that also says a lot about it. And what was your number one, Ben?
Oh, Song to Song.
Song to Song.
Oh,
Terrence Malick.
Well, white dude from Texas, but a writer-director.
Anyways, it still counts, I think.
I'm going to talk about my sixth favorite movie of the year before we we'll wrap up. This is a movie from Norway, actually. It's Thelma, directed by Joachim Trier, who made Reprise and Oslo, August 31st, and another movie I haven't seen. I haven't seen any of his other films. But
Sounds like you've seen a lot more than any of us.
But this is a brilliant movie. It's about a young girl named Thelma, played by Eiley Harbo, going off to college in Oslo, and she has psychic powers. She's
So is this like Stephen King? Like they have psychic powers, don't question it, just move on.
basically, yeah.
Okay.
And the trick is that she comes from a very, very conservative religious family, and she's gay. And every time she represses her feelings, it causes these sort of psychic bursts where she has seizures, where she causes like clouds of birds to swarm around. She even like makes people disappear, and the idea that she's been made to hate who she is. And as a result, that's tearing her up, and indeed tearing up the world around her as well. And the fantastical trappings are used very well to illustrate what's going on inside the character's head. But at the same time, the interaction between her and all the other actors, especially Kaya Wilkins, who plays a classmate she falls in love with, they're so real, they're so true that, I think this is, not just, a great supernatural story, but just one of the best pure love stories that I saw this year, and it's a really moving film. And I also love that, you feel like it's being set up for tragedy. You feel like things are going to go bad. You feel like that her self-hatred is going to turn inward and destroy her. And that doesn't happen. It has a really beautiful, happy, life-affirming ending, and I really admire the film for giving her that. And I think she deserves that, and I think it's a really great movie.
It sounds beautiful.
It is beautiful, yeah. I got nothing else.
All right.
Okay. Right on.
All right. Well, thank you all of us for sticking with us through this epic journey for our favorite films of 2017.
It was a big year.
It was a big year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If you like this, I said before in the other podcast, you know it's a good year when Christopher Nolan makes a movie, and I don't put it at the top of my list.
That's true. you love Christopher Nolan.
If you like this podcast, please click thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at THO Movie Reviews, and be sure to check out all the great reviews and content we have at thomoviereviews.wordpress.com.
Hey, you got it right.
Yes,
Whoa.
yes, yeah, many
He got
times
it. He
now,
got it
by
right
the
last
way.
time. You weren't there.
Once again, I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson. I'm here with Hanna McGrath-Perdue, Mo Shaunette, and Maxwell Meyers, and from all of us here at THO Movie Reviews, happy movie watching.
Goodbye.